Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, the next fight of Moses Itauma has been announced, the up and coming heavyweight prospect here from the UK. Of course, originally he was supposed to fight back end of December. He was supposed to fight on a card that was basically a doubleheader with Derek Chisora. And, at the time, several opponents were banded around as potential choices, including Kubrat Pulev, Michael Hunter, etc. That date never transpired for whatever reason. I don't think they could agree Dillian Whyte and Derek Chisora, which I think was supposed to be the main event. But anyway, that fight date fell through, and here we are, 24th of January next year. Moses Itauma will be fighting the American heavyweight, Jermaine Franklin. Now, for me, I guess I would describe my feelings on this one as mixed. Ignoring the hype of Moses Itauma, ignoring the hype, ignoring the PR, how they're trying to sell the guy, I think from a matchmaking perspective, from a developmental perspective, Jermaine Franklin at this stage of Moses' career makes sense. He's early 20s, he's 13-0, hasn't put a foot wrong so far as a pro. Recent fights he's been blowing people away, like Dillian Whyte, who was absolutely washed in that bout, got stopped in one round. He stopped Balogun in a couple of rounds. He stopped Dempsey McKean in a couple of rounds. The guys he's been fighting recently haven't been able to go any real sort of distance with him at all. And that's where Jermaine Franklin, a guy like Jermaine Franklin, can come in. Jermaine Franklin is a guy who I would describe as well put together. Not the biggest heavyweight at 5'3", but he does the basics well. He's nice and compact, has a good guard, seemingly has a good chin as well. Defensively responsible. Offensively, Jermaine Franklin, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. Doesn't really open up that much. He's low output, but he'll make you work for your openings, and when you do hit him, he's shown that he's got a good chin. Franklin's only losses in his career come at a relatively high level. Dillian Whyte, when Dillian Whyte had a bit more in the tank, as well as Anthony Joshua, actually put up a decent fight in both bouts. He wasn't terrible in either fight. I felt he lost both. The Dillian Whyte one was very close, but I felt he lost both fights. He lost the Joshua fight clearly, but again, showed a good chin, good durability, decent defense at times, etc. His most notable win in his career, I would say, is over probably Jerry Forrest, which was a split decision, another trial horse type of heavyweight, and recently he beat Ivan Dichko. Now, I never saw the Ivan Dichko fight, Ivan Dichko being a former amateur standout from Kazakhstan. That was on the undercard of Canelo and Crawford. Now, from what people have told me, that fight was a robbery. Dichko deserved to win it based on his activity with the jab. That's what people told me. I haven't seen it, but it goes to show, he's still going the distance with guys like Dichko, who had the reputation as being a puncher. So, listen, if this one goes rounds for Moses Itauma, that in and of itself could be valuable. But I think for me, I worry about the ambition of Jermaine Franklin. It's all well and good going the distance with heavyweights that are bigger and better than you, but, do you actually have any ambition aside than surviving? And that's the question I ask about Jermaine Franklin right now, because again, I wasn't told positive things about his last fight, a fight in which he got the decision, but most people felt he lost. Very low output again, not really pushing the envelope or going through the gears or, trying to get the knockout, anything like that. Just kind of happy to be in the fight. And the same was the case, I think, with Joshua. The same was the case to a lesser degree with Dillian Whyte as well. So can he go into this fight and ask a few questions of Moses Itauma's defense? Maybe his chin. I know Jermaine Franklin's not a big puncher from what I see, but he does have relatively quick hands. So maybe he could catch Moses when Moses makes one of his mistakes, like when he pulls out with his hands down and chin up. Maybe he could catch Moses on the way out as Moses resets, with a quick counter kind of thing, quick hook. Possibly, but I think really the selling point for Jermaine Franklin from a matchmaking perspective is the durability. The fact that he's shown he can go rounds against hard punchers. Not only the durability, again, he's relatively well put together defensively. So, he could make Moses work for his openings, instead of like just standing right in front of him like Dillian Whyte did or Dempsey McKean did, offering no defense whatsoever and no resistance or durability. So, listen, from a matchmaking perspective, I get it. I think it makes perfect sense. But the fact that they've come off a pay-per-view fight with Dillian Whyte and then dropped down to a fight of this magnitude, on the flip side, isn't a good look in my opinion, because bear in mind, they could have fought Frank Sanchez in an IBF eliminator. They turned that down. So to go from fighting on pay-per-view to then turning down a world title eliminator to then fighting Jermaine Franklin, it's a bit of a bad look, because I don't think you can have it both ways. If you want to take the slow approach, be honest about it, Be honest about his career progression. And say, yeah, this is going to take a bit of time, We're going to have to match this guy with different styles, different heights of fighters, different stances, whatever it may be. But they haven't gone down that route, They're kind of simultaneously claiming he's the best heavyweight in the world, but he needs time. And, I don't think that's a great look, personally. I don't like that. I understand it's the promoter's job, but when you're like more than a casual boxing fan, it's kind of jarring at times, It's kind of jarring, but overall, I don't have any massive complaints about the fight as such. I think it makes sense to a degree, but yeah, in comparison to a guy, I think a guy like Frank Sanchez would have been more interesting, put it that way. Although I do prefer Franklin to Kubrat Pulev, who, they was originally trying to get for Itauma for December. But yeah, it's all right. It's all right, I would say. All right. It's passable at this stage, I would say. The undercard is all right, to be fair. It's all right. It's one of those Frank Warren Magnificent 7 shows that he does every couple of years. And you got a couple of good fights on the undercard. Willie Hutchinson versus Ezra Taylor at light heavyweight. That's a good domestic matchup. I think Willie Hutchinson is far more skilled, but I think he's vulnerable in terms of gas tank and stamina. Whereas Taylor is a unit, but skill-wise, he's not really up there with Hutchinson. Maybe Taylor can grit that out to come into that fight late on. But I would imagine Hutchinson's skills might be a bit too much, but it's a good fight. There's going to be back and forth there as well. Going to be a bit of banter between those two guys, which will be interesting. Liam Davis versus Zach Miller at featherweight is a decent domestic clash, I think. Solid fight. Shaquille Thompson versus Brad Pauls at middleweight is a really good fight. Brad Pauls was a former British middleweight champion. He also gave Denzel Bentley a pretty good fight. So yeah, he's proven at domestic level, whereas Shaquille Thompson is on the up and up. He's an up-and-comer, and this is a step up for him, so that'll be interesting to watch also. Aside from that, Nathan Heaney's on the undercard. I mean, not really interested, to be honest. Aqib Fiaz versus Jordan Flynn, that's okay domestically. But yeah, basically this is outside the main event. It's a domestic card, and I think boxing in the UK has been missing these type of shows. Just shows that have several good domestic fights on them. Nothing amazing, nothing that's going to reinvent the wheel or, get you super excited per se, but just decent fights, decent content basically, And I think Willie Hutchinson versus Taylor is exactly that. Liam Davis versus Zach Miller is exactly that. Shaquille Thompson versus Brad Pauls is exactly that. So the card in and of itself on DAZN, no pay-per-view I'm assuming, good card. Good card. I like it. I wish Moses could have fought a slightly better opponent, but I get it. But overall, I like the card. What about you guys? How do you see it? Beanie Guy Del Boy, peace.